Welcome back, everybody. It's time to talk about the terms that you need to know for the prologue of Romeo and Juliet. So before we start getting into those terms, I just want you to know what the prologue is. Many of Shakespeare's plays do open with a prologue, which is like a just a little bit of a what the play will be about to get the audience enticed, and usually it is written in the form of a sonnet, and we're going to talk about what a sonnet is.
Two households both alike in dignity, in fair Verona, where we lay our scene, from ancient grudge break to new mutiny, where civil blood makes civil hands unclean. From forth the fatal loins of these two foes, a pair of star-crossed lovers take their life, whose misadventure piteous o'erthrows do, with their death, bury their parents' strife. Thank you very much. Thank you.
So that's the prologue, and these are the terms that apply to the prologue and to the rest of the play as well, really. So first you need to understand the difference between prose and poetry. Prose is ordinary writing that is not poetry. It consists of complete sentences and paragraphs. So some examples are short stories, plays, and novels, and some picture books too. Poetry, though, is verse that is written in stanzas. Often poetry rhymes, and it usually has a rhythm to it as well. So I have examples of prose and poetry for you that we are going to look at. So this is an excerpt from a novel called The Absolutely True Diary of a Part-Time Indian, which is hilarious, by the way. And you can see this is the very first page of the first chapter of the book, The Black Eye of the Month Club. And it starts out with a complete sentence. I was born with water on the brain, period. Okay, so that's not exactly true. I was actually born with too much cerebral spinal fluid inside my skull. But cerebral spinal fluid is just the doctor's fancy way of saying brain grease. And brain grease works inside the lobes like car grease works inside an engine. It keeps things running smooth and fast. But weirdo me, I was born with too much grease inside my skull, and it got all thick and muddy and disgusting, and it only mucked up the works. My thinking and breathing and living engine slowed down and flooded. So you can see there's complete sentences, there's a complete paragraph, so this is an example of prose. And then if we look at a classic picture book by Dr. Seuss called The Sneetches, for those of you who are unaware, most of Dr. Seuss's books are written in poetry. This is an example of verse and stanzas which make up poetry. So the Sneetches starts out, now the star-bellied Sneetches had bellies with stars. The plain-bellied Sneetches had none upon theirs. Those stars weren't so big, they were really so small you might think such a thing wouldn't matter at all. And you can tell that this has a lot more rhythm and musicality to it than the prose that we just read. So prose is complete sentences and paragraphs versus poetry, which is verse and stanza, and it has a rhythm and a rhyme usually, but not always. Okay, you also need to know what a sonnet is. A sonnet is a 14-line poem. It has to have 14 lines that has a structured rhythm and rhyme scheme. Rhythm of a sonnet for a Shakespearean sonnet is always iambic pentameter, and the rhyme scheme of Shakespearean sonnets is always A B A B, C D C D, E F G G. And those letters indicate the last words of each line that rhyme with other lines in the poem. Okay, so we are going to look at an example of a Shakespearean sonnet just to give you an idea of what one sounds like. Remember, Shakespeare wrote 154 of these, which is extremely impressive because they're difficult to write. This one is Sonnet 116, Shall I Compare Thee to a Summer's Day?
Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Thou art more lovely and more temperate. Rough winds do shake the darling buds of May, and summer's lease hath all too short a date. Sometimes too hot the eye of heaven shines, and often is his gold complexion dim. And every fair from fair sometime declines, by chance or nature's changing course untrimmed. But thy eternal summer shall not face, nor lose possession of that fair thou owest. Nor shall death brag thou wanderest in his shade, when in eternal lines to time thou growest. So long as men can breathe or eyes can see, so long lives this, and this gives life to thee.
Okay, so this meets the requirements for a Shakespearean sonnet for several reasons. You can see that lines 1 through 4 are they're a quatrain because they're a group of 4 lines together. They're a quatrain that have a specific rhyme scheme, A, B, because day and May rhyme and temperate and date rhyme. And then you can see 5 through 8 are another quatrain with a CD rhyme scheme, 9 through 12 a third quatrain with an EF rhyme scheme, and then all sonnets end with a rhyming couplet like this one, lines 13 and 14. And generally the couplet is like a way of solving, the poet's way of solving the problem. So the problem presented in this sonnet is that the author or the narrator of the poem is writing or talking to somebody who's so beautiful, more beautiful than a summer day. She can't even be compared to a summer day because she's so gorgeous. But everything always dies, including human life. And so in order to preserve her beauty and her amazingness, he is writing this poem for her, which will always keep her alive. It's a very romantic poem. Okay, then we have Iambic pentameter. Now, all of Shakespeare's plays are written in a version of Iambic pentameter, except for the plays don't rhyme. But the sonnets are always written in Iambic pentameter, which it's a meter or a rhythm in poetry. You know, rhythm is like da-dun, 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 whatever gives music beat. So a lot of times the drummer will keep the beat or the rhythm for a song. It refers to a line consisting of 5 iambic feet. And the word pentameter simply means that there are 5 feet in each line of poetry. Okay, so penta means 5, like pentagon, 5 branches of the military. Each foot contains 2 syllables. So there are 5 feet. So there are 5 feet per line that each have 2 syllables, which means that each line really has 10 syllables. And here is an example.
Let me tell ya what's going down. I am the pentameter. Don't you frown, cause it's been around since you and me could speak. Just listen to it sound. It sounds just like a heartbeat. Ba-bum, 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 ba-bum. You know what a sonnet is that I won't repeat. Take a line of the verse and divide by 5 feet. Then you take the foot and stop the words out. Stress and stress syllables deep and shout. Then you take it all and put it into a rhyme. I know it sounds hard, it just takes a little time. And when you write your own, it becomes quite clear. The best rapper alive is who? Shakespeare! If you think I'm playing, then you better play the radio. Cause this is not a joke, yo, it's something you should know. Any hip-hop song climbing up the pop charts. I am the pentameter is where it had its start. Do you know why? Of course it works better to memorize lines when you're on stage in the middle of a play. Nothing brings you more rage than forgetting what to say. So next time you hear about a boring Shakespeare, you know the truth, you yell, lend him an ear, dude, cause hearing this language is kinda cool. Let me show you the way, and you'll learn so soon. Without the masters, the rappers, and hip-hop MCs, we'd have never ever heard to be or not to be.
Okay, so a little bit more about iambic pentameter when he was saying the heartbeat sound. This will kind of explain that. An iambic foot is an unstressed syllable followed by a stressed syllable. So we could write it like this, da-dum. The DA is the unstressed syllable followed by the dum, which is the stressed syllable. So every line of iambic pentameter has 5 of those feet. Da-dum, 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 da-dum. And that's how the rhythm is created. A line of iambic pentameter is 5 iambic feet in a row, like so. In faith I do not love thee with mine eyes. And it's difficult to do this because you can't just throw any old words into a line. You have to know which syllables to have the natural stress and make sure that you place them appropriately in the poem so that it continues with that rhythm. So the fact that Shakespeare wrote 154 of those makes him the bard. And the bard, B-A-R-D, that is the phrase you need to know for this video because that is Shakespeare's nickname. Bard means poet, and he was the bard, the best poet who ever lived. Okay, then you have blank verse, which is unrhymed iambic pentameter. And this is actually what his plays were written in because the plays, since they were so long, they didn't all rhyme. That would have been awkward. But it was written in iambic pentameter, it just wasn't rhyming iambic pentameter. So Shakespeare's plays are largely blank verse, as are other Renaissance plays. Blank verse was the most popular in the 16th and 17th centuries in England, which is why Shakespeare used it. And typically, the more affluent or wealthy characters would speak in blank verse, but the lower characters, like the servants and maids, they would usually speak in prose. Okay, so then we have a rhyming couplet, which is two back-to-back lines of poetry that rhyme. And they can be within a larger stanza, or they can be set off by themselves. Shakespeare ends all of his sonnets with a couplet, as you just heard, and Shakespeare ends most of the scenes of his plays with a rhyming couplet, and Dr. Seuss really likes rhyming couplets too. A famous example of his is, I do not like green eggs and ham, I do not like them, Sam I am. Those are two lines with the same rhythm, and they both rhyme, so it makes it a rhyming couplet. Shakespeare likes to end his scenes with a rhyming couplet because it provides nice closure. So here's another example from the Sneetches from Dr. Seuss. This particular stanza, consisting of 6 lines, has 3 rhyming couplets. When the star-bellied Sneetches had frankfurter roasts, or picnics, or parties, or marshmallow toasts, they never invited the plain-bellied Sneetches. They left them out cold in the dark of the beeches. They kept them away, never let them come near, and that's how they treated them year after year. So you can hear the rhythm and the fact that every 2 lines rhyme. So there are 3 rhyming couplets there. Okay, then you have a quatrain. A quatrain is 4 lines grouped together in a poem. Cuatro in Spanish, just so that you know, means 4. And I'm pretty sure there's a Latin word that means similar to that too, but I didn't take Latin, so some of you might know that. And here's an example of a very short poem that consists of 2 quatrains, and each quatrain has an AABB rhyme scheme. Behold the hippopotamus, we laugh at how he looks to us, and yet in moments dank and grim, I wonder how we look to him. Peace, peace, thou hippopotamus, we really look all right to us, as you no doubt delight the eye of other hippopotami. So it's just kind of a cute little catchy poem to show you how some poems are pretty much just a couple quatrains, and that's it. Okay, then we have a fancy term called enjambment. Enjambment is lines of poetry that continue or run on over a line break. So you're not supposed to pause at the end of a line of poetry when you're reading it out loud unless there is a period or a semicolon or a dash. If there's not one of those things, then you're just supposed to keep going on to the next line as if you were reading a complete sentence. So enjambment means if there's just a comma or no punctuation at the end of that line of poetry, you just keep reading it as if it was one continuous sentence. So here's an example from Dr. Seuss. So you know what I think? Why, I think that there must be someone on top of that small speck of dust. You wouldn't read it like this. This is bad. So you know what I think? Why, I think that there must be someone on top of that small speck of dust. That's awkward. There's no punctuation after the word must, so you don't stop. The fact that we keep going, that is called enjambment. The opposite of enjambment is end stop. That's when the line ends with a period or when a long pause is implied. So here's an example. It says, Sam! Exclamation point. That's end stop because we have to stop. If you will let me be, I will try them. Again, period, end stop. You will see, period, end stop. But the line that says, if you will let me be, you don't have a long pause after that. It's just a minor pause because of the comma. So that line would be enjambment. And that is it for our prologue literary terms. Hope y'all had a grand time, and we'll see you tomorrow.